Hey guys, Cory here with Co-op Couple. Welcome to part 2 of my RPG Maker VX Ace tutorial. In this video I'm going to be talking a little bit about the database and the resource manager. As these are very important parts of making your game, I figured I'd cover them early before we get into any actual event creation. So the first part we have in the database, once we click on it, we got a lot of tabs there. We'll go through each one of them. First tab obviously is the actors, which is basically your main party characters. You can of course increase the number by going to change maximum, and then I think the highest number you can have is 99 or 999. I'm not too sure. Let's find out. So let's see. Okay, so yeah, you can have at least, yeah, it looks like at most 999 characters, which is a lot. I don't know if your game will be having that many. I can possibly see some games having a couple hundred characters if it's a game like Suikoden 2 or something like that. But anyway, in this screen you can obviously change their name, nickname, their class, initial level, their description, their character graphics. If you have a customized character that you want to use instead, you can change their actual graphics, like that one's a cat. It's you can obviously just change their face graphics as well, like if you had a picture of a cat or whatever, then that's how they'd appear in the menu. But you can also put in here features, where it's got a lot of different things here, like you can add different skills, you can have default equipment for them, action times, basically whatever you can imagine you can put into additional features. Obviously here's a note where you can just leave a note to yourself in case you have a lot of characters. It'll help you kind of sort through them a little bit. And then of course you can create their starting equipment as well. And then in classes, of course, you can change the maximum here. These are the properties for each class, like how they level up and everything like that. So say, instead of putting each actor having a different leveling up type of system, you could put like 4 different actors under the same class, and then they'd all level up similarly. So in the classes, you can change the EXP curve, how much HP and MP they get per level. Like you can just kind of change it like that. And if you have like a priest or whatever, you'd want them to have less HP or something. And then you have the skills that they can learn for their levels. Say like at level 60, they can learn heal 3, who knows. It's basically just whatever you want to create. And then the features, they have different parameters that you can set, like hit and evasion, critical. You can set those to that particular class, and then you can determine which weapons and armor these classes can equip. So we have the skills next. RPG Maker always has some pre-built skills complete with animations built into the thing. So here you can basically just, if you wanted to create a new skill, obviously you can change the maximum to 999. I assume that's the maximum for this as well. You can put the name of the skill, the description, the icon for it, what type it is, if it's a special skill or magic, MP cost, TP cost, which I assume is like technical points, or action points in some games. You can change how many enemies or allies it affects, and then you can change whether it can be always used or only from the menu. And then different effects, you can have what it does, if it damages the enemy or recovers health, you can determine it here. And then damage, you can determine what kind of damage it does. Then obviously you have the success rate, the animation. You can also select the animation, which is a few tabs, several tabs away, and we'll get there. And then you can change the message, like, oh, so and so casts blah blah blah. And then you can determine if it requires having a weapon equipped or not. And in the next screen we have the items. Items are important to any game. You can change the maximum number of items, so you can have a lot of flexibility as far as creating items. As you can see, it has some basic items there for you. A bunch of healing items. So you can create a new item here, and then just give it a graphic, give it a name, fairy dust, and then you just give it a description, if you can buy it from a store, if it's a key item. Now a key item usually can't be thrown away in your inventory, and it's important to the story typically, so obviously for a regular item you'll just want it to be normal. The scope, the occasion, and then you can change the success rate, which is strange if you wanted it to have a lower success rate, like it was a rare item or something like that, or if you want it to damage or have any kind of effects. So very interesting, different items there. Next up we have the weapons. The weapons, obviously it comes with some default weapons, which will get you to a good start. It has 60 weapons, a bunch of different types as well. So with that, I mean, you can obviously just make a game with that right there, and then you'll have a bunch of different weapons to choose from. If you did want to create your own weapon, then what you'll do is you'll just, same with the items, you'll just choose a graphic, choose a name, description, weapon type, what it adds, if it adds attack and defense, and then you can obviously change the features as well. Same with the armors. It starts you out with up to 60 armors, and then you can change that maximum. This is the same type as the weapons, that you can just change the different features and what it gives you. So there's a lot of flexibility there. So the next thing we have here are the enemies. Now this is a little bit different from, say, the enemies that you'll actually encounter. That's going to be explained in a moment. So these are just creating the enemies that you might see in a game. So they give you a bunch of ones from the system itself. So we have several options to choose from. You can change the different features about the enemies, their attack, defense, HP, everything like that. And then you can give the enemies different skills, and then determine when the skills are used, like if they only use the enemy or the skill at a certain turn, and then you can give them one if they use a skill if their HP is less than a certain amount, and then you can have them use a skill if a switch is on, which we'll get into switches when we talk about events. So obviously here you can change the dropped items, the rewards like experience, and then different features that the enemy might have. So the next thing we have is the troops. Now there's a lot to talk about here, because in troops, not only do they have the enemies, they have how they show up in battle, like how many of them show up. So basically you can change that to have multiple enemies in there. Like say for example into this I wanted to add a couple of these guys. Now you can obviously change them where they display so they don't get kind of cluttered. So you'll have like a couple of these guys. See, they're kind of spaced out now. Obviously you'd want the flying guys up here in the corner. So yeah, there's that. And then you have battle events, which basically we'll talk more about when we get to events. But like say for example, when you have this type of formation show up, you can set the condition to this won't allow the enemy to run. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, you can change to have the enemy run maybe after turn number 5 or something like that. And then you have the events as far as what happens during the battle. This actually, okay, I understand now. So you can change the condition, and what the condition is like on turn number 5, then they can display a message like hello. That'll show up during the battle. Obviously, you can use that for a bunch of different reasons, like if, like say you have a battle that's going on that's like a main story battle, and you have to get out of a dungeon before it collapses. Obviously, after each turn, a message could show up that says the cave will collapse in 2 turns, and you have to defeat the enemy by the end of those turns. Just kind of giving you some examples there. So this change battle back. This is pretty interesting because it'll let you change the kind of the background and the land as well. So say for some reason you wanted that, the stone flooring along with the temple walls, that looks kind of nice. So you could have that, and that would be the new background that this battle would take place in. And then you can battle test, basically test who you want to fight or who you want to try against this group of enemies. That's useful for determining if the enemies are too powerful or not. And then states, you have the obviously you have these different status effects like death, poison, blinds, which you can obviously change. So there's not much to talk about there. You can change these, like you can restrict if you want MP cost down to be, can basically just affect one enemy or affect one ally, and then you can have it, you can have the removal, like say you want the status effect to remove at the end of a turn, then you can change that as well. Like say poison, you would want to have that removed at the end of probably a battle or something like that, and then determine how many turns it lasts. So that's pretty much on that. Next up you have the animations. Animations are, they give you a lot of different animations, and these are typically used with skills, but you also see them used with like you're using an item, it'll show a quick animation. But yeah, animations can be kind of confusing because you have these animation sprites that basically change to end up as a full skill. So say at the end of it all, if you want to take your time making your own animations, you'll end up with something like this. So that animation will probably take a while to make, but if you have the patience for it, you can make some pretty cool animations, and obviously you can kind of mix and match. Like let's see here. If you want to make if you kind of want to make a new animation, you can change. You can set 2 graphics for it. Like if I wanted a gun and darkness, say you wanted to shoot dark bullets, it'll allow you to use both of those animation graphics for it. Oh, and I mean you can obviously change the number of frames in the animation, because animations they go by the number of frames. Like each frame will display part of it, and you can have I guess up to 200 frames for your animation, which is quite a bit actually. So next we have the tile sets, which basically determine which you basically use for creating your world. The tile sets will allow you to basically import a different type of tile set. But now you'll notice that on the graphics, you have A1 animation, A2 ground. You'll kind of want to keep those, although you can mix and match, you kind of want to keep them similar to the A1s and the A2s and A3s, because if you put like an A3 where the A1 is supposed to be, obviously it's going to look kind of strange. So we'll go ahead and choose inside A1 for this one, and maybe outside A2 for that one, and then outside A3 because that's the only one that'll give you buildings. And obviously you can make your own tile sets and then kind of import them through the resource manager. So what you have here is, once you have your tile set created, you'll want to, now these are already configured, but if you bring in your own, you'll have to determine the different properties it has. Say for example, you import a new building. These X's mean that you can't actually walk through them, which is good. You don't want to be able to walk through buildings. If for some reason you wanted to, you'd click on each one of these, and then it would be a circle, meaning that you can passage right through it. And the passage for direction, say you have, now it won't show anything on this particular one, at least not yet, but say for example, usually the passage for direction will let you change which direction you can move on a particular space. Like it'll have 4 arrows. Let me see if I can find something here. Okay, so what we have here, you see how there's like 4 arrows, meaning that you can walk on top of this. So saying there's a building right there, you can walk on top of it like it's a platform. Say you only wanted to move left and right on it, you'd uncheck the top and bottom arrows, and that would only allow movement to the left and the right. Similar to that, you have the ladder. Like if you want something to behave like a ladder, and then you'd be able to climb vertically up it, you'd click on it to kind of set the ladder tag there. And then you have the bush, which is only on a few different tiles. As you can see, when you click on it, it has those little wavy lines. What that does is it kind of creates the illusion that your character is walking through something, and their legs are kind of hidden by the item itself, so it doesn't look like you're walking on top of it. And then counters are something that are basically like, if you have a store, the counters will have this diamond shape. If it's like a store counter that you would go up to and talk to a clerk through. And then damage floors are which floors you want to cause damage to the player. And we have the terrain tags. These are a little more complicated. They determine how your character kind of moves through an object. Like on this particular tile right here, if you wanted the character to walk under it, you would set it to a higher number, basically meaning that that's higher than the player. So the player, instead of walking on top of this, he would walk under it, and then this would be over him. And then you have common events, which are basically set up through here. Like you want to have events in the game, but you want to have it not just take place at a certain time. You want it to call at the beginning of every time you walk outside. You'd set up a common event, like say you wanted it to rain when you went outside. You would do that through common events. Again, we'll get to more of that when we get to events. And then system, we're almost done here. We only got 2 left. The system is basically where you can change most of the actual little features here. Say you want your initial party to start with a different character. We'll start with Brenda for whatever reason. And then obviously you can change if you want Brenda to be with Rick. Those two are the 2 characters you'd start out with. The title screen, or the the music here you can change. There's a bunch of different default music it comes with that you can choose. These are different background musics that you would change for each one of these particular circumstances. And then sound effects, that's self-explanatory. For each one of these you can change the sound effect for it. And then obviously here you can change the game's title. You can change what boats, ships, and airships look like. And then you can display the window color, like you don't like that blue, you can have something like that. And then starting positions, basically this determines where your character starts when the game starts. And then the last part here, title screen, you got the graphics. Now you can change this, this is what it shows up when the game actually opens, and you have the option like start and continue or whatever. You can change that to a few different options. So you want a world and then mist, you can change that and that's what it'll look like when the title shows up. You can also make your own if you want to as well. And then you have the terms, which basically the terms are if you want to change the name of things, like say you have different elements, instead of the dark element you'll have void, and then so anything that used the dark element will now use the void element. And then obviously you can change the weapon types, names as well. So you don't want magic, you want to use that instead. You could do that, and then obviously you'll change the armor. You'll change the basic status, like instead of level, it'll say LV. If you want level to say VR, it'll show VR instead if you wanted to for whatever reason. And then basically in this screen you can just change how things are labeled. So instead of fight, you'll have destroy, you'll destroy if you wanted to have that. So that pretty much covers the database. I'm only going to briefly talk about the resource manager as it's pretty self-explanatory. Now the resource manager, you can basically import and then export. Like say you wanted to change the animations a little bit and you wanted to tweak them, you'd export them into a folder and then you would edit it and then re-import it. And then same goes for all these different resources here. So that pretty much covers the database and the resource manager. Just wanted to kind of give you guys some knowledge on what's going on those fronts, because those are integral parts of the game making process with RPG Maker. Next video, I'm going to actually show you how to create a world and kind of set down graphics for it to kind of make it look visually appealing. So as always, like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and take care, guys.